We're live. We're about doing a stream with you, Archon, since you're very interested in the whole free speech and government topic. So I thought I might do a stream with you. So how are you?
Pretty good. Downloading new games on my PS3 and stuff.
So where do you think how broadly do you think free speech should go? Just in general.
Um, Beyond the way the free speech is set up in America right now is pretty much how I feel about it. Um, it's probably not perfect. I'm sure someone could probably find an area that I would have issues with, but in general, the whole setup that they have for libel, slander, is fairly well thought out. The only possible areas that I might have an issue with is where it comes into like fighting words and hate speech and stuff like that, because that's a situation where it's just kind of like you know people should be able to say what they want as long as they're not actually um, like causing direct harm, and you'd have to actually prove that case to
So,
actually.
so where would you draw the line with like hate speech or like you said, physical harm and stuff like that? Where would you draw the line?
Um, like with hate speech, like if you were just gonna use the word nigger at a black person or something like that, as long as it's not like okay, if there's a situation where you knew that someone was that's not. I guess that's not a situation where it would be something up to the law. That'd be more of like you're a dick for doing it. But it's mainly like uh, I don't think there should be limits on it necessarily because I can't remember who said it. No one forces you to do anything. Like the whole idea of fighting words, I think, is ridiculous because no one is forcing you to throw the punch. You're the one that's deciding it. No one is forcing you to get so angry. You're making yourself angry. So when they do the whole fighting words thing, you can't say nigger to a black person because it'll cause because it's it's violent, it's threatening, harmful, blah blah blah. It's like no, that's not the case. Um, and like you and I don't think it's possible, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. But I don't think it's possible to actually have um, a situation where words can cause direct harm unless it's over a long period of time, but that would fall under harassment or stalking.
Would you like? Where would you like say if it's actually a threat? Would you consider that limiting free speech?
You mean like if someone said if you basically a good example is the Anita thing. If you go through with this fucking speech, I'm gonna bomb it or whatever.
I'm not familiar, but yeah, go. Like if what would you categorize threatening someone? Would you say that would go on free speech, or would you say that's illegal?
Um, it kind of depends. I think in that situation, it would have to be slightly on a case by case basis, similar to how the FBI and law enforcement handle it. They usually don't worry about it too much unless it's against either a high ranking official or they're very specific in the threat. So I mean, if it was something like that, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but that one shooter that basically left this not a manifesto, but this list of all the things he was going to do. It was about a year or two ago. Basically, he left this big fucking list of all the things he had been planning to do, but he'd only gotten like maybe two or three of them done and stuff like that. If someone had like made this list and started reading it off and been like, I'm going to come to your home and rape your children, then I'm going to cut off their head and mail it to your fucking supervisor, and then I'm going to kill him too. Like, if they went to that much trouble to threaten someone like that, yeah, at that point I'd be like, okay, that's a little bit much. Like maybe you need to be maybe you need to be investigated. But like even then, it would still you'd still have to actually carry through with like a warrant and stuff like that to see if they're actually going to carry out this threat. And if they're not, then they should be fined. If they are, then they should be jailed.
All right, and when it's when it comes to online stuff, harassment, cyberbullying, or whatever you wanna call it, where is your stance on that?
I don't think you can be bullied online. It's literally a matter of you can turn your fucking computer off to end it. Um, like I can understand where people are coming from because as someone who was bullied quite severely in high school, probably not to the extent that some people were, but still pretty badly. I can understand the emotions that go into it and why some people wouldn't like it, but at the same time, it's like because in high school when I was bullied, I didn't have the choice to just up and leave because a lot of the time the bullies will choose opportunities where you can't escape to do it. Like they'll pick a time when there's not a teacher around or not an adult or any of your friends around to back you up, and they'll corner you, and then they'll basically make your day hell. That's what they would do. In this situation, you can't exactly call it the exact same thing. You could probably call it a dick move. They're assholes, and sure, if you're going to be bugging someone constantly for no reason, then yeah, you're kind of a dick. But I don't think it's on the same level as bullying by a long shot. Because if it gets to the point where you're being affected by it, you either like if it's on Twitter, you go onto the internet and you just surf like go to YouTube and watch some videos or something for a while, or block the person because all these people that are talking about cyberbullying is horrible. They're always the people that are abusing the block button. Well, not abusing, but like overusing the block button for the stupidest of reasons. And it's like there are multiple different ways you can deal with this problem. You can block them, you can mute them, you can just turn off Twitter, you can go elsewhere for a couple hours. There's so many other ways. It's ridiculous.
And we know that people are bitching about this, and
Did you
what
cut
is
out?
your kind of rest? Huh?
I didn't hear anything you said because your mic cut out. I think.
Oh, oh yeah, I think I was lagging. I didn't hear you. Basically, the whole like gay misogynistic talk over the microphone, which gaming has been accused of lately. Where is your really stance on that? Where basically what I would say trash talk.
Oh,
And
you're talking about that crap they were talking about on like GTA and stuff, where the hackers would like freeze their characters in place like that.
no, well that as well, but also like if you're over the microphone when you're talking trash over the microphone, basically. What's your stance on that as well?
Um, I think over the microphone is much the same as like online on Twitter and stuff like that. There's not much of a difference. Um, it's slightly more of a personal thing because it's not through text; it's actually through voice and everything like that. But at the same time, it's still a situation you can easily get out of. Like if it's on Xbox Live or something, you can either mute. It's been a while since I've been on Xbox Live, so I could be wrong and maybe things have changed. But you have the ability to mute players, and even if they were able to get around that, you can just leave the game if it's bugging you that badly. Like no one's forcing you to deal with it. Only you are forcing yourself to deal with it.
All right. Now we kind of talked about this on a previous stream, but we had multiple other people kind of like sharing with me as well, sharing the opinion, and we talked about the Apple thing, and we know now. I can I could put the link in that chat and in the description, where Bill Gates has basically come out to say he supports the FBI when it comes to uh, basically private companies should uh, support the FBI on handling criminals, which I kind of think is kind of goes under free speech and like being able to do what you want as a private entity, and what basically the FBI is doing, or at least in my opinion. I think your opinion as well. I'm gonna let you talk, but where the government is forcing someone to do something they don't want to. What is your
Yeah.
sense on that?
Oh yeah. In regards to the whole Apple thing and FBI, like the comic that I remember reading says it really well. You know, it's kind of satirical in a way because it is making fun of it. But it does make a very good point. You know, this it says in one of the final panels, saying, you know, this is America. How can you force us to write or say something we don't agree with? And I think that's quite telling. And as we've seen through other stuff that's come out because of this kerfluffle with Apple and the FBI, there have been numerous instances in the past 6 months or so that Apple has gotten requests from other agencies to unlock iPhones of different makes and models, and they've declined all of them. So, you know, this may be a situation where Apple is only being asked to, you know, break into this one phone by writing this code, and, you know, the FBI won't be allowed to take the code back to work on it and whatnot. But it's clearly not just a, oh, it's only this phone issue anymore, because of how many requests they've gotten to unlock all these phones. They're gonna keep fucking doing it, and the latest problem with the FBI is basically them getting tired of being denied and saying, okay, we're gonna dig on our heels and we're gonna try and force you to do it. And basically, if they get their way, then it's gonna set a legal precedent to where they can just, okay, we're gonna have you unlock all of these phones now, because now that we've gotten now that we've shown that we can force you to unlock this one, all these others that you've been denying the last 6 months, now you got to open them too, and it's just fucking ridiculous.
And as I've said previously, we know the American government have shown that they can't restrict their limit to spy on people. So this is also kind of ties back to kind of the Patriot Act and what happened with after 9/11, when people got onto lists and no fly lists when just because they knew someone, or maybe they said terrorist too many times over the phone or whatever. And we've seen this before. What are your thoughts on previous records showing that the government has abused their power, at least in the U.S.?
I think they need to fuck off, because, like, I don't care what you think is a big threat or whatnot. If it requires spying on your own fucking people, then, like, that's just fucked up.
Yeah, and we know people have been questioned, and there was even a case. There was a couple. I believe this was. I may be wrong, but it's quite some time ago, a few years ago. I saw uh, a couple saying on Twitter, basically slang for where they came from. They were going to destroy the U.S., meaning they were going to party till they got hammered, basically. When
Right.
they as much as they could in the U.S., and they got held up at customs and questioned and sent back to UK, even though they had everything and no previous record, just because they sent out that one tweet.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked up. Yeah, like
And
I can understand them wanting to investigate them and everything, but like after the interrogation and whatnot turned up nothing, they should have just let them go. That's fucking stupid that they just kicked them out.
I'm just using it as an example because
Right, yeah.
uh, the voyeuristic nature of the American government, where it is spying on people, and also kind of restricted free speech, because people were afraid of saying the wrong stuff after 9/11, if you can remember back then. Because I remember seeing people who got the FBI on the door because they they had their phones tapped, and so they people basically self censored because they couldn't say what they wanted.
Yeah, the problem back then too was that there was this whole line of rhetoric where, and I think that a lot of the people in the government were of the mind to say that if you weren't for the war, then you were a traitor, you weren't a patriot. So yeah, a lot of people were afraid to really speak out. There were certainly demonstrations and stuff against the war and stuff back then too, but a lot of people, if there wasn't this line of rhetoric that you were traitors and whatever, if you didn't support it, there'd probably a lot more people out there protesting.
Yeah, true as well. And that's kind of also the stuff they used against people who were voting against or using rhetoric against the war back then. But we've seen recently with all these universities just banning or trying to censor free speech on campuses. Well, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think there is a solution to all of that?
The government's trying to censor free speech, or the schools are.
No, like SJWs trying
Oh,
to censor free speech on campuses.
yeah, I think campuses are one of the areas where free speech should be required. Because campuses are there for people to learn. If people aren't able to speak their minds because they're afraid of being punished, then how can you learn? Because the only way you learn is by getting challenged by opposing viewpoints and seeing if you can debunk them. You know, like that's how you become smarter. That's how a lot of, like, a perfect example is like the atheist community and stuff like that. When it was first starting to grow and become more widespread, and people were like, oh wow, it's actually not a bad thing that I'm an atheist, type of thing. There were a lot of Christians that would be arguing with them, and there are quite a few that I know of that kind of lost their faith, so to speak, because they went to go challenge atheists, and then they found out that they couldn't really fucking debunk. So it's how people learn and grow.
Yeah, and do you think there's anything we can do to have a solution for the all the Puritans, I would say, regressives at campuses right now trying to censor this free speech?
One second, I got someone at the door. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. If there are any questions in the chat, go ahead and ask them. I will put them put them up for Archon to answer. Like Axis Fiverr or Norby Delta. If you have any questions, you're the one posting in the chat. There we
Hey,
go, Archon. Yeah. So, do you have any? Would you pose any solutions for all the censorship on campuses?
on ways that we could stop the censorship on campuses.
Yeah, like how we could try to be as have as much free speech as possible on campuses? Would your solution be to that?
Basically, I think it's up to the students themselves for a large part, because the administrations of the colleges have shown for quite some time now that they are more than willing to just pussy out and fucking capitulate to the vocal minority. So what people need to do if they want their colleges to actually be an area for free speech, they need to make their will known and actually either physically go to the administrators and say, I don't want this place turning into a goddamn hell dump, and it being this goddamn echo chamber. Because like, I can't remember which college it was, but I linked an article in the Skype group last night where where there were students on a campus that were literally being threatened with expulsion because they were standing on the grounds, and I think they were basically just saying curse words. Or no, they were actually protesting censorship itself, and were talking about certain topics that were censored on campus in some areas, and the college basically threatened to expel them. But once they actually served them with a lawsuit, the college was like, okay, we're dropping it. But they didn't address any of the actual problems. They just dropped it in the hopes that they would be able to, you know, squeak out of the problem, but they didn't. So, yeah. Basically, the administration as it is now, unless there's a major change in how the colleges are being administrated, they're not worth a damn. It's up to the students to make their will known and to, basically say, I want our colleges to be good again. Because right now, a lot of people are not really thinking colleges are anything worth a damn. Me included.
Uh, well, I know I shared it in the with people, even on Twitter and on Skype and everywhere. Where there was this guy on campus, basically being a dick. Yeah, he was basically just being dick, but he kind of had a purpose behind it because he actually got told by the police that it was against the law to offend people.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a mixture of a bunch of fucking bullshit and university cops being a bunch of pussies. Because my experience in the past with university cops, at least where I live, is that they they don't seem too confident in their ability to actually do stuff. And they seem unsure a lot of the times, because I still am employed at this company, but I'm not. I'm laid off at the moment. But I work as a security guard, and there was a time when I was working a contract down at an apartment complex, and frequently police would be involved because it was a dangerous area. There were drug dealers that lived there. There were relatives of drug dealers. There were gang members that used to live there, etc. So, cops would frequently just patrol through the area just to make sure nothing was going on. And there was a time when some jackass decided to steal a car and drive through there with the police on his tail until he had an accident and then bolted. Well, the university cops were the ones that were chasing his ass down, and when the actual cops got there and were trying to get some information out of the university cops, let's just say that they didn't seem to have all the information on hand. Like they weren't prepared for the questions that the cops were asking them, basically. Like, the cop is basically asking for basic information about the events of what happened, and he's just like, well, like that. It just it's hard to explain. It's just they don't seem confident in their own ability to actually do their job, and that's just my personal experiences. Maybe it's not the same everywhere, but like it makes me think that maybe people are basically saying, yeah, this is illegal, when it may or may not actually be illegal, you know. And in that particular video, they were saying that they had done this quite often. That they had served people with tickets for this exact same reason a lot of times. And I'm really thinking, well, damn, I hope these people take it to court. Like, that's bullshit.
I'm reading a little bit from the chat now. The Norby Delta saying there is either complete free speech or restricted speech. You cannot have semi-free speech. Would you agree to that?
Um, yeah, I would agree to that. The only problem is though, like that's like I can agree with that on like an absolutionist situation, but in reality, um, you're not going to be able to have absolute free speech. Just like, America is the country that, well, it's a country. There's probably others, I'm sure. But America is a country where, there's like, oh, there's the most freedom and whatnot. Well, it's still, you still don't have the freedom to murder people. You don't have the freedom to go around and destroy property, So, you don't have absolute freedom. You have a lot of freedom, but you don't have absolute freedom. And personally,
Well,
if stuff like slander and libel is still illegal, I don't have a problem with that because that does cause damage.
yeah, I was kind of say that if you restrict other people's freedom, that I would say goes within the law, which the country decides. I'm sure there are different laws between my country and yours. So what goes?
Here's a better example, in fact, and I think I don't know how familiar anyone listening is with Matt Dillahunty, but I think he is the one that uh, quote that said this first, but I could be wrong. Basically, your rights end where mine begin. As soon as your freedoms start impacting mine, such as where slander, where your ability to say whatever the fuck you want starts impacting my reputation within a business or within an industry, that's where it becomes an issue.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that works just like with property damage. As soon as your right to swing a stick ends in hitting my house and destroying my property, that's where it becomes a problem.
I have John Kelly in the chat asking, how do you deal with SJWs claiming harassment isn't free speech?
Well, the problem is that SJWs define harassment completely differently than the government does. So, that's kind of a red herring because it's like it's kind of like asking the question Andrew Dahl, when did you stop beating your wife?
I don't know. She hasn't
Exactly.
said anything.
Exactly. I don't even know if you're married and I doubt you beat her, but it's like assuming they're talking about the same kind of harassment. It's like they're not, and it's very very clear that they're not.
Yeah, yeah, they aren't really good.
Your mic cut out again, I think, or you're lagging.
The word using instead of the legal term. That's my claim.
Yeah, and harassment kind of goes into another field as well because harassment is kind of a mixture of words and actions. Um, because harassment can fall under both physical harassment and verbal harassment as well. You'd have to be more specific with it as well.
I have from Norby Delta. The primary issue is he's referring to the SGWs. The primary issue is their ability to deplatform people. I suspect the best way to deal with it is to use their tactics against them, i.e., form trans, gay, etc. groups can utilize them to broadcast your message on your behalf. Additionally, campus administration is aligned with these malignant groups and are easily manipulated to the SGW mentality.
Yeah, my best recommendation of it, although it probably wouldn't work at this point just because of the way the country is right now, because a perfect example of this is like, there's a fairly large set of people that when they're asked on how you would fix terrorism, like over in the Middle East and stuff with like ISIS and stuff, it comes down to education and informing people. And I think that's very similar to how this works. With the whole SJW thing, if people are educated properly on not what to think, but how to think, like methodology and how to reach conclusions and how to think logically and stuff like that. If people were actually being taught this shit instead of a bunch of feeling based common core no child left behind bullshit in the education system right now, I think we'd be a lot better off. And I'll be right back again.
All right. Yeah, continue with your arguments or your questions in the chat. If you have further arguments or questions, go ahead and post them. I'm gonna ask them to Archon, and we're gonna be discussing them a little bit. So if you have anything you wanna counter with what he's saying, or if your question isn't being or argument isn't being told well enough, go ahead and or asked well enough, go and try again, and I'm gonna ask him. Otherwise, just gonna wait until he comes back, and I'm gonna pick stuff you're gonna post here in the chat. The reason I kind of did this was because I thought he had some interesting views on free speech on previous streams, and thought it would be interesting to hear his opinion on this matter. Yeah. Oh, he is back. Okay. We have something on in the chat. Off topic, but have you heard that the youth group of the political party, the Liberals, Folkpartiet Liberalerna, have pushed to legalize incest and necrophilia, or if the corpse signed a consent form before dying?
Yeah, we actually discussed this, I think, last night or the night before, or something like that. It's it's really funny, and my opinions on this are probably going to be in the unpopular category. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Depending on how they word the legislation, I don't necessarily have an issue with it. Okay. So the way the necrophilia part of it would work, obviously it would have to be a signed waiver, and they'd have to specify how long after death you'd be able to have sex with them, because at a certain point it becomes a health concern, because the body's going to rot unless they're preserved, and you also have to take into account the family's rights to a burial and whatnot. So I mean, it cannot be an indefinite thing unless the person signs it saying it's an indefinite thing. And I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be litigation saying that this is a bunch of bullshit and everything like that. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that, or the incest problem. The incest part, while it's gross, but the gross is an emotional response type of thing, and I don't think we should be legislating based on emotions. It should obviously be between two consenting adults. So whatever country or whatever the legal age is for the country, anything above that, two consenting adults can have sex if they're related. I don't think there should be a limit on how closely related, father, daughter, mother, son, brother, sister, cousin, etc. I don't care. The only limitations would come kind of as a tangential part, would be if there were kids involved. Once the kids started getting involved, like, where there's actual pregnancies as a result, that's where I would have an issue. Because that's a situation where the people involved in the relationship, let's say this is a brother and sister. Brother and sisters have a much higher risk of having a child that has birth deficiencies or deformities, whatnot, um, than like cousins. Cousins are on a whole different level than brother and sister because of just the closeness in the genes. So when it's really fucking obvious that if you two have a kid, you're going to have a child that's going to need assistance, either severely or only moderately, and you go through with it anyways, at that point, it's like you shouldn't even be eligible for fucking health assistance or, welfare or whatnot for that child or yourself at that point. Because you made the decision to have a child with the very high risk of that strain. You could have just had a normal kid with someone else if you really wanted a kid, but you chose to have that kid that had a very high chance of having that problem. And it's really not fair to other taxpayers or other citizens of the country to have to fucking pay for your little fuck up baby. Like that. I know it's an asshole thing to call your baby, but like it's going to be mentally retarded in some ways, almost guaranteed. And that's just not fair to the rest of the citizens to have to pay for that shit.
All right, yeah. And we have Norby Delta saying using actual law in order to combat campuses is the best option, such as when you have those silly rape claims being conducted in kangaroo courts. We need to inform people to go straight to police, fund allow the campus to put you on trial.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that the students are basically the ones that have to take it upon themselves in the situation, because the administration it has every incentive to fuck you over, because it's basically it's like, for all intents and purposes, it's following the law. It's following the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law type of thing. They're still within the law, but they're fucking over people. And it's technically illegal if you like dig deep into what they're doing behind the scenes and everything. So, if you ever get into a situation like that, yeah, go to the fucking authorities. Like it's like I don't even understand how they're getting away with this shit, because the colleges shouldn't even be able to fucking have courts like that. That's just ridiculous.
Norby Delta says having free speech and consequential results are exclusive. Do you agree?
It depends.
Yeah, he says it depends.
Like
intent versus belief.
Yeah, if you're talking about actual free speech, like just basically stating your political views, yes, there should not be punishments for just stating your opinions and stuff. But it depends it depends on what you state is free speech. If we're talking about slander, which I don't think is free speech, there should be punishments for that. But as I've already covered with the whole, you don't have the freedom to run around destroying property. You don't have the freedom to slander people and damage their reputation in an industry and whatnot. And there should be punishments for stuff that's not protected speech. Because there's a reason why it's not protected speech.
John Kelly is saying slander and libel are not illegal, though defamation is a tort, not a crime.
Wait, say that again?
Slander and libel are not illegal, though defamation is a tort, not a crime.
I think that, actual people knowledgeable about the law would disagree with you, because there are plenty of people that have been taken to court for slander and libel. So, I don't know where you're pulling that shit. But I mean, if we want to get into this, we can get Axiom in here, because he's a paralegal and he can answer that.
Yeah, I mean,
and while he's not a lawyer, he would know more about this than I would. I mean, if you really want to go down that route, John. Well, and I very well could be wrong on that, but there's kind of a reason why people get taken to court for slander and libel, and while some people are serving jail sentences for it. It's not the worst crime, sure. You're not going to get life in prison for it, but it's still illegal.
Norby Delta says you have free speech, but you can suffer the consequence as defamation. There's a big question on Facebook whether anti-abortionists should have the right to protest. Of course, SJW is brigading with absolutely not. Who do they think the government will come after next? Canada is considering banning anti-abortion protests.
Yeah, see, well, Canada is a little bit different because they don't have the exact same laws that America does. But in America, and correct me if I'm wrong about Canada, because I'm not, as I said, I'm not familiar with them. You have an amendment right to protest. So if they started outlawing protests, there'd be hell to pay. And you keep going back to the whole idea that slander is protected speech. It's not, hence why it's illegal. And as I said, there's a reason why it's illegal, because it affects someone else's rights. When you're able to say, like if I just started claiming that Norby Delta is a fucking rapist and a pedophile, that's going to affect your reputation with your friends, probably at your work. You might get fired if I actually, if I like emailed your boss and said that type of shit. That might get you in trouble, and that's illegal. That's fucking slander.
Yeah, we kind of covered this. Someone, Michonye, whatever you say that, ask our tweets harassment. I think we kind of covered that.
Yeah, we covered that.
Yeah, I would say also kind of back up Archon. He's saying tweets are not harassment unless there's a tweet saying with the chain of tweets saying where you live and specifically what they're going to do, basically threatening you. That's not even harassment, that's a death threat. So
not only that, but for harassment to apply on Twitter, it would literally have to be a situation where, like the account was constantly blocking you, but they were evading the block, or they were basically, it would have to be a situation where you wouldn't be able to escape from it. And I don't think that there's any situation on Twitter where you can't escape from it, because you can literally just turn Twitter off, or you can create a different Twitter. It's not hard.
yeah, this is kind of the incest comment. From the point of view of nature, incest necrophilia is morally fine. In the case of incest, it is genetically unfavorable. Human morality dictates no.
Human morality dictates it. What now? I'm not familiar with that. As I said, breeding would be a problem. The sex is what we're talking about. Incest is merely the act of having sexual intercourse with someone of the same relation, the same bloodline. Procreation is something that I do not agree with, as I've already stated. If they were going to have kids, I'd have an issue. If they're just having sex with no intention, or, as long as they're wearing protection and doing the pill and whatnot like that, I don't have a problem with it.
That's kind of also.
And once you start arguing from the it's unnatural or whatever, or human morality type of thing, that kind of starts going down the same line. Well, sodomy was unnatural, etc. When you see gay sex going on in nature and shit like that, it's not the same. It's probably not the same thing, but it's dangerously close to that line of rhetoric.
We have mentioned the thing again. If I can't slander someone, that isn't free speech. What are your thoughts on that?
If you subscribe to the idea that you should be able to say absolutely fucking anything without consequences for it to be called free speech, otherwise it's not free speech, then sure, go for it. The problem is that I'm being realistic about this, and you can complain about it all you like, but it's the more realistic position to kind of admit that within a society you have to limit some parts of freedom. There's just some things you're not going to be able to allow people to do. As my example has been stated before, property damage. You don't have the freedom to go around and destroy people's property. If that means all your freedoms are now forfeit because you don't have the ability to do that one action, then hey, that's up to you, man. But that's not how I choose to view the world. I'm still free to do plenty of other shit.
John Kelly just posted a link. But I would have to say to John Kelly, we're not legal experts, so he gave me a link which I'm loading up now. Let's see. For some reason it's not loading for me. There we go. Because he says, let me quote so I don't. Yes, if this was kind of to the slander as a tort, and he's saying defamation is a tort. Let's see. The difference between I can screen share this. And if you get a hold of Axiom, he could get a. I've already messaged him because he's really there. Here, what is a crime? What is a tort? In what kind of court is a criminal case heard? In what kind of court is a tort case heard? What two things must be a plaintiff prove in order to win a tort case? Can the same act be both a crime and a tort? Protecting citizens from harmful acts is basically an orderly society to protect citizens. Governments pass laws making wrongful acts crimes. A crime can be described as a wrongful act that injures or interferes with the interests of society. However, many acts that result in harm to others are not crimes. Accidentally hitting another car with your own is not a crime, even though it could cause harm. It is a tort. Generally speaking, a tort is a wrongful act that injures or interferes with an individual's persons or property. A tort cannot be intentional. Yeah.
So, based off of just what I'm reading, okay, so technically it's not a legal thing. It's considered civil. But the fact that they, refer to it and are actually setting this in law, because, they're talking about defamation law. To some extent, it is a legal thing. Because they decide to punish it differently or handle it slightly differently and term it slightly differently, it doesn't make as much of a difference. Not to mention, there have been times where people have been jailed, while not too long, because of defamation. So, on a technicality sense, I would agree with you. But I'm not a legal expert, so, that's not surprising that I would be wrong on something. So technically you're right, but in my opinion, it's not that big of a difference.
Yeah, he has 3 events. Mary sells heroin to Jack. Steve not looking where he's going. Knocks Mrs. Fail down. During an argument, Lana slaps Beth in the face. Yeah, this is kind of long, so I don't know if you want to go through this.
That's fine. I have the page up on my end.
Okay. Yeah. A tort is a wrongful act that injures or interferes with another person's property. A tort case is a civil court proceeding. The accused is a defendant and the victim is a plaintiff. The charges are brought by the plaintiff. If the defendant loses, the defendant has to pay damages to the plaintiff. A crime wrongful act the state or federal government has identified as a crime. A criminal case is a criminal proceeding that the accused is also called a defendant. The victim is the person who has been hurt, or the state of Georgia or the other government mental entity. The charges are brought by the government. If the defendant loses, the defendant must serve a sentence. A fine is paid to the government, and there is a possible restitution to the victim. I have to kind of correct. You don't always get a sentence. Sometimes you also just have to pay a fine.
Yeah.
State has made selling heroin a crime. Mary would be prosecuted for this criminal proceeding by a district attorney representing the people of the state. If found guilty, Mary could be fined and sent to jail. The victim of a crime is not a party to the legal action, Jack would not be suing Mary. Rather, he would be one several witnesses for the state in the case. Court our cases are heard in civil proceedings. Yeah, which kind of what you said. The legal process is quite different from criminal proceedings. The civil process provides a legal means for victims of harmful acts to be compensated for the harm done to them. Event 2 is a tort. Mrs. Frail has been injured by Steve's act. In order to recover the money for the harm or damage she has suffered, the civil process required Ms. Frail sue Steve. Furthermore, she must bear the cost in terms of time, energy, and money for doing so. In such legal activity, the victim of the tort are usually called the plaintiff. The plaintiff begins a court action against the alleged or supposed wrongdoer, usually called the defendant or tortfeasor. In event 2, Mrs. Frail would be the plaintiff. Steve would be the defendant. To win a tort case, the plaintiff must prove two things. The defendant committed the tort as a result of the tort, plaintiff or the plaintiff's property was injured. If a plaintiff like Ms. Frail can prove both, she's entitled to recover money. Damage, basically saying you have to prove what you're claiming. Basically, is what this is saying. Same act may be both crime and a tort. Event 3 is an example of an act that is both a crime and a tort. Linda may face criminal action by the state and civil action by Beth, the individual who was injured. Why are the two different legal actions against one wrongful act possible? In effect, criminal law provides a way of punishing people who commit crimes. It acts to protect all citizens from such wrongdoing. Criminal law is not concerned with the individual victim. The law torts, on the other hand, provides a way to compensate victims of wrongful acts. In reality, victims of crimes like burglary, rape, and armed robbery rarely sue the wrongdoers, primarily for practical reasons. For instance, if the wrongdoer has no money, which collect a lawsuit would accomplish nothing. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yep.
So, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's we've already given our views on this, and it's possible that this website is incorrect as well. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I don't know. It's legal aid, so
I'm
it
just
might be.
it goes along with that old saying, everything's right because it's the internet type of thing. Websites can be outdated, stuff can be changed, etc.
Yeah, basically. Defamation is not a crime, but it is a tort, civil wrong rather than a criminal wrong. A person who has been defamed can sue the person who did the defaming, which we've seen. We kind of.
Already.
Huh?
We covered that already. Basically, we just had
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, because we kind of touched on that, but we had some people on the stream last Saturday with the whole Jenny McDermott and Armored Skeptic thing, which is defamation, which he could actually sue if he downloaded both videos and could sue her.
It's not a matter of him downloading them; it's already been done by other people.
Yeah, true. But he would have the video to show the court to show that she did this. That's kind of my point here. So that's free speech. I mean, this is an extreme going in both ways. You can have extreme free speech where there are no consequences of free speech, but there's also consequence for having just free where free speech doesn't have a consequence, which basically means
I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything in reality that sits on one extreme. There's no extreme freedom and there's no extreme no freedom because
I'm
in a
kind
lot
of
of ways
talking.
it's not possible.
I'm kind of talking hypothetical.
Right.
If you have total free speech, you could be lying and basically threaten other people and not suffer any consequences. And the consequences could be people's lives come in jeopardy because of that. And if you have the extreme other, just saying something that's just offending someone could just land you in jail, which we know happen in dictatorship. Let's see. It seems like Frank Kelly has a rather strong view on this. I don't know if you would be willing to discussing on this.
On the stream or just on the subject?
On the subject.
If he wants to discuss it further, that's fine. But keep in mind, I'm not a legal expert, so it's basically
of course, neither of us. So I wouldn't be.
Well, no, I know. I'm just letting him know this because it's like I've already admitted that I'm not a legal expert. I'm just going off of what I understand it as.
Norby Delta kind of responded to, I think it was mine. Yes, but that would be a consequence. You are not prosecuted for the free speech itself. You are prosecuted for lying. Yeah, but see, if you have extreme free speech, as an example, as I gave, you would not be you would not suffer any consequences, which is kind of
the problem. The problem with that is that the whole, you know, you were prosecuted for the lie. It shouldn't matter. The lie would still fall under free speech in that point. The lie was a product of free speech, so it should be protected if you're considering that free speech.
Yeah, it looks like John Kelly wants to jump on at least a little bit. So, if he wants to kind of discuss this a little bit, as long as we keep it civil, of course.
Should we get a man in green in here then?
Oh my god. That would end up very badly, and spaghetti would be spilled everywhere.
Son, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, looks like John is on Skype now. Let's wait until he gets in here. If you guys have any points or questions or whatever arguments, yeah, Norby Delta just posted. Norby Delta, a good point. This is a complex issue. It assumes everyone is intelligent and free and malicious content. Yeah, that's a big issue as well. Malicious content is gonna happen whether you want it or not. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, people are gonna, and this goes back to the Apple case too a little bit too. You know, if there's a big fucking incentive to abuse your power, sitting on a silver plate, but it just happens to be through someone else's door, sitting in someone else's house, they're gonna fucking bust through that door and do it. You know, it's literally like that saying, "Absolute power corrupts absolutely." It's very much like that. You give someone an inch, they'll try and take a mile.
Hey, John.
Hello.
If you wanna like go deeper into your point, go ahead. It's kind of hard to just.
The point was about how libel and slander covered under defamation laws, because there's also other things like false light and stuff like that. But basically, it's a case of where someone uses untrue statements to destroy someone's reputation and cause financial damage as a result. That's technically still part of free speech. The reason I say technically is because you're right, you can get sued over that, and there can be consequences which the court of law will preside over. But those are covered under torts. That's not a crime, though. It's the difference between civil litigation and criminal litigation. I'm not a legal expert either, but I did do the research on this, and yeah, that's what the law says.
Right, but as I said earlier, though, like it's so similar that I'm almost not even going to care that it's not the same thing, because when it comes down to it, the only difference is that you're not using the term illegal, you're not using the term law. It's not the same kind of court proceedings, etc. But you still get fucking punishment for doing it by the government or by the people. So, in that aspect, I don't really see the difference, because it's literally just a difference in scope. You know, it's kind of like how it's a difference in scope from the state to the national level. You know.
Yeah.
So
But the reason
technically you're right, but I still don't see it as much of a difference.
the reason why it is a difference is because you can make liable statements and not get sued over it because there's just not enough case for damages, or you can slander somebody in the same thing.
But that doesn't
Defamation
change the fact that it's still liable, though.
You
It's
are
just that you can't take it to court.
you,
Just like okay. Let's bring up a case.
well, before you continue, let me just let me clarify
Sure.
why I bring it up. It's not just like
Yeah,
some
sure.
sort of pedantic form of like a legalese or something like that. The only lawyers would care about. It's a case of where it's a difference between something being prohibited and something like the government says you cannot say this, otherwise you will be arrested and put in jail. Like there are actually some things where you can't say certain things without suffering consequences like that. For example, we just parent spreading bomb making instructions as an example. That's
Fighting words and shit like that. Yeah.
yeah, or threatening to kill the president. That can also
Yelling fire in a crowded theater, etc.
Yeah, although that one was specifically enacted as like an anti-draft law apparently, but I'd have to look more into that. But when it comes to libel and slander specifically, you can be a libelous, slanderous, and you do have the right to face to enact defamation. The government won't prevent you from doing that, and they won't throw you in jail for doing it. But what the government will do is provide recourse for those who are suffering from the effects of slander or libel if it's actionable. That is the distinction. It's the difference between something being prohibited and being allowed to do something with it being explicitly prohibited, and something being and a matter being able to be settled by the law presiding over between the two parties. It is a distinction that needs to be made because
I can agree to that. I see where you're coming from.
yeah. So technically, yes, you do have a right to lie and cause defamation and ruin people's characters, but the government can also decide that damages need to be made for your actions. Like it's
right.
It does tie into your overall point about there being a limit to free speech because your point is a bit. I believe your point is free speech is the ideal. It's not the reality.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like reality is not some pipe dream where you can have absolute freedom.
No, I would actually agree. I just don't think I would have set the same bar the same as you would.
Okay.
That I think would be our disagreement there. But yeah, there are limits to free speech. Like the question becomes like one little thing that I noticed that people try to do when it comes to freedom of speech is they like to take the idea of imposing consequences and use that to your advantage because most people agree that when you say something, you need to own your shit. Like you say something that makes you look like a douchebag or hypocritical or something like that, you should be held accountable for it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm also seeing is people want to artificially impose consequences on people. Like, for example, social justice warriors complain about getting their feelings hurt, and then they say, "Oh, that's harassment." That's not a lot. Like, yeah, they can declare they're offensive and yada yada. But often what happens is people end up losing their jobs. They end up being socially ostracized because they have a particular viewpoint that's considered not that they're being judged by their actions, but they're being judged by an inherent view of the world and they just don't want that, and they just want that to be excised by any means necessary. And it wouldn't even matter if it has to do with their jobs or it has to do with anything else. It's just a matter of, oh, well, this offends me, and that's the reason why this person should be punished.
Yeah. Kind of going back a bit to the example I wanted to bring up to the
I'll go for it.
the whole taking the libel case to court type of thing. Let's bring up an example, a kind of controversial one. O.J. Simpson. If he goes out and murders someone, and we all know that he murdered them, but for some reason, and obviously this is hypothetical, so this is not something that would happen in reality, but let's say that he had the victim's blood all over his shirt, but we couldn't find the murder weapon, we couldn't find the corpse or anything like that, but she's been missing for weeks. and with his reputation as being an asshole and being in court for murder and stuff like that before, we're really goddamn sure that he did it. And let's just say, like, let's just add a little bit of like prescience in there, in that he actually did murder this person. Okay. But
All
the
right.
court doesn't. But the court doesn't know that he's done it. They can't prove he did that. It doesn't change the fact that he actually did murder someone. It's just they can't charge him for it. Just because you can't charge someone for libel doesn't change the fact that they did libel someone.
This is true. It's yeah, that you are correct. Sometimes you can libel someone, but the damages can't be proven. And libel and defamation suits are often very hard to prove because there's 4 factors. The first one being proof of malicious intent, which, looking at the law and seeing how much of it is based on intent, it really kind of unnerves me because intent isn't something you can objectively view. You can only subjectively assess it at best, and even then, good luck with that.
I hope Green is listening to this right now.
That'd be funny.
Just talking about you going off about that subjectivity bullshit in a different Skype chat. I'm like, oh Christ, shut up.
Yeah, but that's yeah. Maybe subjectively assess isn't the right word. Well, actually, no, that would be the right word for it because the only intent that you can really know is your own. Outside of that, and this matters when coming to the law, you can't know what the other person intends ever. It's just not.
Yeah, that's the main problem I have with libel laws and stuff like that. Like, and this perfect example is like science. Like if you press a scientist on like, do you absolutely know that the world is real? No, it's not. We're not absolutely certain anything ever. It's just that to the best of our ability to know stuff, yes. And it's much the same with intent, but it's even harder because it, like, even in a situation where you're able to say much like as well as I can know things, yes, that's the case. You can't even do that with intent because you don't really have any way of judging their intent because it's such a. It's not even a matter of being subjective. It's just such a volatile, fucking malleable issue, you know?
Yeah.
Because it goes into the whole body language, the context of the way stuff was said and done, and a big problem with that stuff is that memory is not exactly the best thing to go off of. If it was like a perfect example that I think Androdal brought up was the whole issue with Armored Skeptic and Jenny. That's a situation where he has a really fucking good chance because it's all caught on video and the people that would be in that case could literally relive the experience.
No, actually, this goes into another factor when it comes to slander lawsuits. In that particular case, I don't think McDermott actually cost Armored Skeptic any damages. Like, he certainly didn't lose social capital. He didn't lose financial capital. I mean, if anything, it made a big story, and a bunch of YouTubers are going to be talking about it. It's going to raise his profile.
To be fair, I don't know if they're going off of U.S. law or Canadian law, so I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, I'd have to look more into the Canadian law. Are they both in Canada?
No, Jenny is in U.S. And Armored Skeptic is in Canada. So I'm not sure which law he's kind of
that's why I brought it up. I don't know which one would be the prevailing law to go after.
That would actually be interesting to look into. I think that I'm not 100% certain, but I think that because Jenny would be the one being sued, I think it would be U.S. law. And if that's so, I don't believe, and I'm going to preface this, I am not a lawyer, so I could be wrong in this. I don't believe he'll have a case against her, even though I agree what she said was horrible and disgusting. But to me, I think that the only consequence that she'll face is being known as a liar, which she's pretty much already been established to. Yeah, like in McDermott's case, I don't want to talk about this for too long, but let me just sum it up like this.
I know.
All right, I'll let you go first.
No, the thing, she didn't just the reason why I'm kind of using this is because it's a really solid case we can talk about. Not that I kind of want to dwell on this topic. It's just the kind of the case is because she said that he was a rapist and it could go under as defamation, even though it might not hurt him financially. It might hurt his reputation. That's kind of what I would consider in this case, at least.
You would be correct if people actually believe McDermott. Like it'd have to be shown that people are now convinced that he's a rapist. It's more of a case of where Brad Wardell has more of a case against Polygon and Kotaku and other websites that libeled him as being a harasser. In the case of this one person who has a YouTube channel that was only up for like a week, and it was taken down because people mass reported it. I don't think that there's enough grounds there. And to me, I don't think, and to be honest, I think that people are going about this particular case in the wrong way. Like, I think Armored Skeptics should definitely look into legal options for this one. I definitely would endorse that, because it's kind of like if you can sue somebody for being like a disgusting human being like this, go for it. I mean, sometimes these people need to be shut down. But at the same time, though, I wouldn't have announced it publicly. I wouldn't have drawn any attention to this. I wouldn't be going to the YouTube comments section, and I know a lot of big YouTubers have been basically going there and just saying, hey, this is terrible. All it's doing is drawing a lot of attention to this thing that could have been gone away if nobody actually spoke of it. And it's kind of like it's like Laughing Witch all over again. You're taking this tiny person, and you're making them this big giant when they have nothing. I mean, unless McDermott is somehow able to convince, I don't know, law enforcement or the general public, which I don't see happening as of yet, I don't think it's worth going after this one YouTuber for. Like, if you want to go after her, just like go to Cow or Baphomet and have fun with her there. That would be my course of action there. Or just point and laugh and then move on. Making a big deal of it is not helpful, and I actually see this going to be a problem, because what they're doing is people are using this as a reason to justify YouTube's censorship policies for reasons that we need like a board to take videos down, and I don't think that's the right course of action, because what's going to happen is those what's acceptable and unacceptable on YouTube is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and instead of just allowing people to say whatever they want, they're going to basically regulate it that way. Like, to me, if you want to use YouTube's platform to basically make yourself out to be a horrible human being, even if you want to commit defamation with it, I think it should be allowed. But at the same time, you'd have to face the consequences of it, up to and including a lawsuit against you. Of course, that may actually, if it is actual defamation, YouTube itself may be held accountable, so it would be understandable to remove it then. But I would say it should only be imposed if there was actual legalities involved. Otherwise, it's kind of like the overbearing, what was it? The copyright infringement thing, where basically, oh, well, you have, for instance, a clip of Kermit the Frog on your channel during a stream, and then it gets taken down because some corporation decided that they didn't like that.
Yeah. That did happen to me, so.
Yeah, I mean it's the same ridiculous nature, and I don't think that this what people are advocating for is what they really want, especially since people are using this and saying, oh, this is a good way to get rid of harassment. And that was another question I asked her on the stream about harassment, and Archon, your answer was correct, but it's kind of a dodge at the same time. Yeah, you're right. They don't. SJWs and other people who complain about harassment on the internet don't have a clear-cut definition for it. They keep on changing and muddying the waters and make it something else. But they're still going to bring it up. And I think it's going to continue to be an issue. And until people... and I think something needs to be... and I think people really need to be inoculated on that. Because if... What I mean by inoculated, I mean like when that issue comes up, they can just point out and say, no, harassment isn't... I think the go-to response for that is harassment on the internet doesn't exist. Unless there's actually, I think I do think, Archon, you did say afterwards that there has to be other components involved. Like, there does have to actually be real life implications in there. Am I correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, basically, if you were going to play the case that you were harassed on the internet, you'd actually have to be able to prove that there were damages done, and that you have no way to escape it. Which, as I said, is basically impossible with Twitter because you can just turn your fucking computer off.
Yep. turn it off or just mute the other accounts. Or it's just ridiculous the way that people are taking this. I mean, did you see Sci-Fi's new show?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I say it's a good science fiction show. It's not based in reality though.
Well,
Yeah.
the channel is called Sci-Fi. But
I wouldn't even call it sci-fi. I think it's just a good fiction show.
yeah, I would like to pose this because it kind of regards both of you, because in the U.S., in New Jersey, I believe it was, you can get sued if a guy lies to a woman and then sleeps with her. Wouldn't that go under limiting free speech?
Yeah, I would say it does. Would it go under limiting free speech? I don't know if I'd phrase it that way, but I would say such a law is ridiculous, or such a tort is ridiculous. If you lie to somebody and you take them on their word, and you sleep with them, that's on you. I mean, trust. It just goes to show that you just shouldn't sleep with someone just because they say something about themselves. You should actually know the person, so there's trust established to begin with. And I think the problem isn't people being lied to. I just think it's people not understanding what trust really is or what it means. At least that's my take on it.
Yeah, because it's basically the reason or the reasoning people have introduced this bill. It's basically rape by fraud. It's basically the kind of background of it. Guys are lying about their income or age or whatever, and which makes it easier for a woman to sue afterwards.
Yeah. Is it a free speech issue though? Not sure in this case. It's kind of like blackmail. I think blackmail is something that would actually be a crime. But that isn't exactly. That more has to do with actions than it does have to do with use of speech.
Well, you are saying something that might not be true.
True. But that doesn't strike me as a free speech issue. That's more of a shitty law issue, where basically they're getting involved with interpersonal relationships and trying to police them through the government, when they can be focusing on when Germany itself can be focusing on better things, like immigration reform, which it desperately needs.
Yeah, Archon, what are your thoughts on that?
I kind of wasn't paying attention. What now?
No, there's a law in New Jersey that's been introduced, or at least a law. Last time I checked, if I'm going to be kind of ignorant, so kind of correct me
Oh
on
wait, did
this.
you say Germany or Germany?
New Jersey. New
Oh, New
Jersey.
Jersey. Oh, I heard Germany for some reason. I apologize. Although America does need immigration reform, it's not to the same extent as Germany does. Continue.
Yeah, it's in New Jersey. Basically saying if you lie about your age or anything like that and sleep with someone, it's basically rape by fraud. It's basically the background of this bill. Would you say it's a freedom of speech issue?
That's really fucking hard because, like, if the person was underage and they had sex, and they like if a 12-year-old had said, obviously, 12-year-olds are probably going to be obviously looking underage, but I mean, let's just say a 12-year-old said, "No, I'm 22, let's have sex," and then they have sex. I can understand that being a fucking problem, and that, there should probably be some penalties for the 12-year-old. I don't know if they should, go to juvie or anything like that.
How do you
necessarily
confuse a 12-year-old with a 22-year-old?
I know it's not a perfect example, but I was just using it because that's a young enough child that there's probably not going to be legal consent ages that low, But like,
I'd more go with something like a 50-year-old saying that they're 18. That would be a better example, because in most jurisdictions, the age of consent is 16 in the United States, and I believe that's the case for New Jersey. I'd have to look up the actual laws. Some of them actually go as low as 13, but very, very special circumstances.
Okay.
In that case, and generally adults, there'd be no age. An 18 and 15-year-old in most places, it'll end up the 18-year-old going to jail. To what degree depends on the state. if that person lied to the other person, that's a more arguable case. But
You'd also have to be. It'd be one of those situations where you'd have to prove that they were the ones that fucking lied too, because it is a minor after all. And while I'm not of the mind to be like, all minors are innocent type of thing, there's no, because that falls under the whole thing that women wouldn't lie about rape thing. Sure, there could be kids that would lie about that kind of shit, but like you'd have to make sure that the child was actually the one that lied and said I'm 18, and then said okay, let's have sex type of thing.
Yeah.
Which would be tough to do. And not only that, it's unfortunate, but you damn well know that the case is going to be stacked against the person that's older.
Pretty much. To me, that's more of a more complex issue. To me, that specific example, though, that's more of a more complicated issue of age of consent. But I think this is a more, if I'm not mistaken, I actually heard about this law back a couple of years ago. Wasn't it if you lie for any reason, though? Like, say that I meet someone and they lie to me about the religious affiliation, and they say, okay, say I meet someone, they claim to be a Christian, but later found out they're a Muslim. Could I sue her for that?
Here's one, and I'm not trying to dig up old shit, but what if someone said that, no, we're not recording, but we are actually recording?
I'd say, and that would it would less be the recording of it and more of the release of it, and there would have to be some sort of something like that. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. That's more of a privacy concern, which to me that's not an issue of freedom of speech. It's a matter of again, that goes back to trust. Like if you say something's confidential and then you go ahead and violate that trust, then well, that's the issue there. But like with this law specifically, I don't agree with the idea that basically lying for sex can lead to fraud. Well, in a sense, it makes sense to a degree. To a degree, it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, though, I think that the onus should be on the person agreeing to having sex with this person in the first place. I don't think that this should be a matter of the courts to handle. This just seems to be a means of lawyers getting more money and not really helping people out. I mean, the solution should be don't make that mistake in the first place. Like, that really should be it. You have sex you have sex with someone that you don't know, that was able to trick you into thinking that there was somebody else. That speaks more of you than it does of the other person. Like, I'll agree it's scummy, but I don't think that should be something the law should be handling. That should be something that earns you the reputation of a liar. I mean, that's not even defamation because you're not even going public with it, just lying to a single person. So I don't agree with such a litigation because I just don't think it's necessary. That's my thoughts on it, at the very least. Though the issue you bring up with age of consent laws, that's a bigger issue. Although, like I said, that's a more complicated one. I wouldn't agree that I actually wouldn't agree that the 15-year-old should get punished for lying about her age. I think that would be shitty, but at the same time, though, the adult is the one responsible there. Yeah. So, where's Andrew?
I don't know. He's muted.
All right. Let's see what the chat has to say.
Yep. Andrew doll, stop masturbating.
All right. Pretty sure some more free speech issues.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine.
Jerking off, I see.
No, I had to put the dogs to bed. So, yeah, what were we discussing?
Oh, we were talking about the New Jersey law you brought up. Can you give us a link to that, by the way?
Yeah. Not the most updated one, I believe, but there are plenty of them.
Yeah.
Here we go. That's the thing. There's also the whistleblower thing. I would kind of like to touch on before we close the stream. Would you consider that free speech?
Whistleblowing?
Well, yeah, what was it?
Whistleblower. Basically, if the government is doing something against the law or the interests of their own people, like I would argue Snowden did, well, what do you think of that? Or should there be consequences, etc.?
Okay, so with whistleblowing, there's already a process set up for whistleblowers to go through in order to do that, and be there's a whole process for whistleblowers to go through to do this shit. And as long as they do that, there isn't an issue. The problem is when it gets to like a really high classified level, you kind of have to weigh the leakage of information with how much damage it's going to do to leak it. Is the need to know more important than the possible lives at risk, if there are lives at risk in this situation? Like with Snowden, there were people that were at risk of getting killed if the enemy got this information leaked to them. So I think it's a somewhat case by case basis depending on it, but really, as long as you follow the process to whistleblow and go through the steps, there's probably going to be very few problems. Now, if there was a situation where, like, because I'm not familiar with all of the steps of whistleblowing, because I'm not like some fucking know-it-all or anything, but from what I understand, at least in like the armed services and stuff like that, you have to go to your commanding officer, and if they don't want to deal with it, that you go to their commanding officer, and you basically just go up the chain of command. Now, if there's a situation where it's almost clear that there's either a disinterest in wanting to help you, and it's actually a really serious problem, or they're intentionally not helping you, and you can prove it. Document all this shit, and then once you've gone through the process of whistleblowing and you still can't do it, fucking release it, as long as it's not, causing harm to people that aren't involved in the whistleblowing process, such as innocents or just other soldiers elsewhere. Release that information, as well as your documentation of the fact that, there weren't people willing to help you in the process through whistleblowing. As long as that stuff goes on, I don't really have too much of an issue.
John?
Well, when it comes, I think, the issue with Snowden was, but it's not. What the issue with Snowden specifically, like with whistleblowing in general, generally deals with people who reveal scandals from corporations or reveal some corrupt crimes and stuff like that, and they seek the law for protections, and they generally even get a reward by the government for it. In the case of Snowden or even Bradley Manning, although there's two different. I don't know the specifics of the case, so I'm just going to stick with Snowden from what I know. In the case of Snowden, though, he may have had good reason for doing what he did. Like it made a lot of people aware of the NSA spying stuff, which was always suspected but was never proven. And then when he came forward, now it's known by everyone that the NSA actually does indeed spy on the internet and keep monitor on everyone. Which, hey, I guess that's a thing. And while that did do a lot of public good, he still betrayed his country, and he has to own that. So, was he in the right for doing it? Arguably. Did he have the right to do it? No, because he made an oath to his country to serve and protect it, and that included protecting its interests and going against it, even if those interests, even if he was being altruistic in what he was doing, he still has to face whatever consequences befall him as a result.
The reason and kind of why I'm talking about this issue is because after the New Year stuff in Cologne and other places, they're now looking for the whistleblowers who shared the detail that they were censoring and hushing it down with the immigrants being behind the attacks. What would you say to that case?
In the case of Germany and the Cologne attack cover-ups and stuff like that, I'd say that those people have every right to betray their own countries because their countries are just basically acting like complete do not serve the people anymore. Unlike the United States, where the country government's doing things that do work against the people, but is ultimately a net benefit. In Germany's case, is a net negative, and that's pretty much the policy with the rest of Europe. Them working against them, while it may be while the same principle applied, you do have to own up to the consequences. I'd be in fully support of them taking the radical act and betraying and violating the law in those cases. It does come to a point where the law is no longer serving the people, and the people have to work against the law. It's the same reason why I support the Swedes burning down those refugee camps, because those immigrants are a problem, need to be gotten rid of. They're raping their women, and they're causing violent crime. It's not acceptable, and not in any degree. And the government's is doing everything they can, not only to continue this bad process, but to censor and to stamp out wrongthink that goes against it. So yeah, they should be doing what they're doing with that. And as far as them catching the whistleblowers goes, well, good luck. This is stuff that happened out in the open and public. I mean, you can pull your strings with the media all you like, but those people are just going to go ahead and they're going to call their people and they're going to email them and stuff like that, and they're going to find out. So you're going to say that them being witnesses to a public event that you want from thugs is going to be an act of whistleblowing? Well, tough shit. I mean, Germany's government's going to have an uphill battle, but if they really want to go down that road and they really want to arrest those people, it's not going to bode well for them long term. It's just going to it's going to keep on eroding their society and eroding their government. It's going to basically make Germany worse and worse. So I think that what they should really be doing is seeing that this multiculturalism push is bullshit, and they need to reform their policies.
Archon, do you have any thoughts?
Not particularly, no.
The reason why I'm kind of using this as an example is because I don't know if there are any English articles on this issue, but I read this in German, and they're basically going after the whistleblowers now and trying to find out who did this, and there could possibly be some repercussions with jail time or suspensions or anything like that.
Well, what's their justification for doing this? Like, what reasoning could they possibly have to go ahead and say that people who are reporting the news are guilty of violating the law?
I don't really know. All I know is that they're going through the process of trying to figure out who did this. So, do you guys have any thoughts?
No.
I already gave mine. So it's a case that's what can I say? Germany is going back to authoritarianism. Like that actually is authoritarianism there. That's not just a buzzword. That's a real problem.
Yeah, if I'm gonna rant on Germany, I would be sitting here for hours. But I kind of wanna have this last topic, which is kind of related to this with Facebook and Twitter, with their whole censorship. We know that German government are now actively going after speech that are anti-immigrant on Facebook, and we know that Twitter Council is anti-free speech of that aren't in this clique of SJWs or really extreme left that are getting banned on Twitter and silenced. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, basically, if you're gonna crack down on fucking speech on the internet, you're gonna have a hard time getting rid of it because it's just gonna be really easy to get around that. The only the only way they'd be able to stop it is by doing what North Korea does with the whole censoring of the internet. But the further down the route they become more like North Korea, they'll find that other problems start becoming more like North Korea as well.
What I think about the Twitter stuff, I think that that's just a mess. That platform needs to be burned down. It's basically they want wrongthink and different types of opinions and viewpoints to be removed and excised off the platform. I mean, when you get down to it, Twitter's really just a vehicle for the left to promote their propaganda. Twitter itself gives hundreds of thousands of dollars to various liberal organizations. You can just look this up on their website. In an effort to promote, social justice issues and progressive slants and all this other bullshit, and it's really clear the direction they're going. They don't want to appeal to they don't want to appeal to the public. They want to appeal to people who share their mindsets, who share their viewpoint, and everyone else can just go away. And I could get on with I'll go into that, but it's just it's like when it comes specifically to immigration stuff, though, will they start censoring that? They might. I think they'll start. I think the way they'll do it is if the German government will go to Twitter and ask them to remove the stuff, and Twitter will say, "Yeah, we'll remove it for Germany," and that's how that will work. They'll basically censor it based on certain parts of the world. There's already precedent for this. I believe that back in 2009, there was a Twitter account that was deliberately blocked just for Germany because it was a pro-white nationalist swastika touting type of thing. Say what you will about neo-Nazism. I think that while that may have been what they may have been forced, I don't know if they were forced to do that under the law or not, but that precedent's already dangerous, and I just think it'll just continue on to other areas. So, and when you really get down to it, the whole ban the swastika thing for Germany that's only resulted in a culture that fears itself from becoming this evil bad guy. So basically, any kind of opinions that are too controversial, they get excised, and it's built right into the culture of the people. And that's what censorship's about at the end of the day. It's about information control, and that's exactly what people who want a certain that's exactly what social justice warriors want. They want people to think a certain way and only a certain way, so their agendas can rise above the top and all the other agendas fall. And that's how they're pushing their issues. And Twitter can't be looked at as this place that needs to be reformed. It needs to be looked at as this place that needs to be burnt down. And it's getting there. It sure is, but it could use a few more nudges. What I look into is I'd start looking into those financial connections I was talking about. Also, there's also some other things you can do, but digging on Twitter as a corporation as opposed to what little policies are doing here and there, that would be the best option.
Let's see. Norby Delta says Twitter is a SJW cesspool now. They're banning and shadow banning any speech against or not aligned with their regressive liberal views. Would you agree?
I'd say that's fair enough. I mean, they banned that other McCain, they banned that Stacey McCain guy, and then they've also banned they also banned other conservative bloggers and journalists, and there's also reports about being shadow banned. By the way, I think those reports about being shadow banned are a little over exaggerated because I think what happens is you're shadow banned for 24 hours and then you get back on, but it's still clear what they're doing. They're basically I would say he's mostly correct. If it's not there now, it's becoming that way. And slowly over time, that's exactly the kind of place it'll be. The reason for Twitter's end, though, isn't so much to push the ideology for their platform or specific policies. It's because they want the platform to sell better. So they're just going to make it, they're going to appeal to the lowest common denominator. And that means getting rid of anyone that would make anyone feel remotely uncomfortable and pushing all this other stuff right to the top. So, yeah. Unfortunately for them, the way they're doing it is completely backfiring because people are taking notice and they don't want it. It's become their game plan has become far too obvious. And the more obvious that people make it, the more that they'll burn out, and the more the normies will just be like, fuck this, and not even bother with it.
You made a joke that you were gonna buy Twitter shares, Archon. Are you still gonna do that?
If it gets cheap enough, I might.
That might actually be a good idea. I wouldn't say to do it now, but if later it becomes like like right now you have to pay $15 a share. It's not worth it for people to just start buying it up. But later down the line, if the Twitter price drops to, like, I don't know, maybe like $1 or so, it might behoove people to start just buying them up, so that way you can just take Twitter and just close Twitter down that way.
Yeah, when it comes in single digits.
Close them down. I'd buy their stock and fire everyone in charge and hire new people.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I mean, there's a lot of people that work at Twitter, and all of them are pretty much the same type of person. The problem with Twitter, when you get down to as a company, is there's two problems really. The first one being that they focus on all this self-policing and politics and other bullshit that they push, and it's just wasted spending. It's not necessary. People don't want it. It's not good for business, but it gives them good. It gives them the perception of a good atmosphere and good PR, and a lot of leftist organizations like that, and they'll pick up on that and they'll give them promotions or whatever. The second problem is they don't know what the fuck they're doing, technologically speaking. Like, you go to Twitter and there's bugs everywhere. The TweetDeck, a great way to condense Twitter down and make everything easier, is completely bugged. It leaks. You have to reset it every so often, or it'll cause a crash in your computer. With how they search the logarithms, it's bugged. It's completely bugged and broken. The API system, it just takes up too much in the cache. What was the other one? Oh, like, that autocomplete feature? It's most likely that's not a case of censorship. It's just a case of that thing being handled by a computer that doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. It just makes up. It's basically. It's not a case of where they're searching certain tags and just making them so that way when you autocomplete it becomes something else. It's most likely just incompetence due to a bug. And these issues probably won't get fixed.
The problem with that is, though, is that there have actually been leaked conversations from Twitter where they've actually said that they were censoring shit in the past.
With the autocomplete feature?
With the autocomplete feature, yeah.
Okay, well then scratch that one. I guess that's more.
I don't think the parts that they were censoring at the time were related to Gamergate, because it might have been a year before it started. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were doing that now too.
Yeah. Another way they censor things is, like, if you have they also have like a soft censorship thing, where if you have tweets in a thread and you comment with a bad word or two, it will basically make it so that way when you click on the other tweets in the thread, that specific tweet won't appear. That one really bugs me, because then you lose a certain bit of the conversation that might be critical for context, and it's annoying.
I'm looking at the chat, so we don't exclude it completely. Norby Delta says Twitter needs to be dealt with by dealing directly with the shareholders, bypass the controllers. There's no way to confirm, deny how they are manipulating popular discourse. No, I disagree. Counter Twitter tags get removed, where the other stupid remain forever.
First one, yeah, I would have to agree with this first point that Twitter needs to be excised. That's pretty much, you can't ever trust a company again, the platform. The point about Twitter tags, yeah, we just no, I disagree. Counter Twitter tags get removed, where stupid ones remain forever. Yeah, I can see that. Like I said, I was probably wrong about it, especially with what Archon said, where they mentioned doing this before. So yeah, it's most likely a case of censorship. It's stupid censorship because it's easily bypassed. But yeah, and not to mention before with the "it's over" hashtag, where someone found out what they were doing by promoting some content above others. With, like, if you were promoting Donald Trump content, it got buried underneath a whole bunch of liberal propaganda for Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders.
Yep.
Yeah, so just...
I have been seeing Gamergate is hate and such things when you try to do the hashtag Gamergate. It auto-completes.
Yep.
Well, and that hashtag is basically dead. So I don't know why that one pops up.
Probably because they're hoping on people being stupid and just hitting the enter button instead of just hitting exit. So, or the escape button rather. I mean, it's really easy to get around. All you have to do is just if that autocomplete thing comes up, just hit the exit button and continue your post. That's what I usually do. Keep in mind though, I use TweetDeck. I know most people used vanilla Twitter.
Yeah,
also,
I use vanilla Twitter.
that might be the next thing they do. They might actually get rid of TweetDeck. I hadn't thought of that, but
Even I would also use the point. Twitter is a private company, so I know there's going to be counter arguments for people saying that because it's a private company, they could do whatever they want. But
yes,
it's
they're correct.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm saying is correct as well. But I just want to say that even though they're a private company, screwing over your customers is the stupidest thing you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessarily about them being able to do whatever they want type of thing, because there is a limit to what private companies can or can't do on their own.
This is also true.
And while it's not necessarily applicable in this case because there's multiple other social media websites that could take its place easily, but like just for example, like in the real world, um, technically businesses could discriminate based on like gender and stuff like that in certain areas. But the reason why it's in law now is because if you allowed every single business to do that, it would literally become it would almost become like that situation that the UN was talking about where you were basically not allowing Assange to leave the embassy, so it was illegal detainment. It's technically starving people, because if all of the grocery stores refuse to sell them products and all the food places refuse to sell to people, then they would literally starve to death,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There are actually laws which enforce corporations to basically protect people's rights to that degree.
Exactly. Right,
Yeah,
and as I said, it doesn't necessarily apply in Twitter's case because there's other places people can go, and it's easy to replace Twitter. Because, I mean, hell, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Hope McKenna on Twitter at all.
slightly familiar with that person.
Yeah, she has the Sea Lion and the Freeze Peach. Basically, they're basically copies of Twitter. They're not as big, but they run around the same model.
Yeah, I'm not happy with this Hope McKenna person for reasons, but I don't have to go into those. But as far as those platforms that she's using with GNU Social, it's okay. Like if you like GNU Social, great. I just see it just doesn't. There's something off with it. I can't explain. It's basically not a very good platform. It's inferior compared to Twitter. I don't think it's going to be what replaces it. Although
Well, I wasn't saying that was going to replace it. I'm just saying that it's not hard to set up an alternative network similar to it.
Yeah, I would actually. I'm for people using other alternatives to basically go up to someplace else so they can talk instead of just being confined to Twitter. I mean, I even shelled out Talk, so I got a bunch of people to go ahead and just use that platform instead. You can go back. There's also Vote you can go to. Nchan if you're into image boards. There's plenty of places you can retreat to from Twitter if you're tired of using it. And the reason why I'm staying is because I want to ensure it burns. But getting back to the earlier point about the freedom of speech and being a private company, yes, they are a private company, but that doesn't mean they're abiding by free speech, because free speech and the First Amendment are two different things. The First Amendment protects your rights of free speech from being impeded on by the government. That doesn't mean the idea of free speech doesn't exist otherwise. So
right.
That's exactly how I handle that. So I can say that yes, Twitter is censoring its own platform, and yes, it is a violation of free speech because they're not allowing certain opinions to be exercised. They're just banning users left and right because they have the wrong opinion, and it's blatantly obvious. And their attempt to cover it up is just it's bullshit. That's basically what's going on.
Yeah, which is kind of my point, where they basically are screwing over customers. I'm also looking in the chat. One of your biggest fans, that Norwegian guy. Oh boy, John Kelly, grabbing popcorn, autism in 3, 2, 1. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. Well, he can go fuck himself. What can I say?
Oh god. Norby Dalta says, unfortunately, Twitter is now operating an anti-consumer policy, which we kind of agree on. Their ideas are clearly leading to share price degradation rather than improving the platform. They are excommunicating users. Yeah, not just excommunicating users, but with a certain point of view or political point of view. And continues, unfortunately, I still have fun on Twitter, less than previously, but still so. I have also developed a comfortable follower list, and I would be distressed to have to start anew.
Yeah, I see that, which is why I recommend chilling out alternatives. Like if you want to seek out alternative, go make an account there, start posting more content there, and just tell your friends to get over there. One way you can do that is like connect your other account from your other platform to your Twitter account and just cross post. There's ways you can do it. Like there's like connectivity which does that. There's also other platforms can just instantly upload content to Twitter, and you can just bring them over. I wouldn't recommend doing that for all the content because you want people to switch over, but just do it for like every 5th one or something like that, depending on how often you post it.
Oh dear. What is that?
Sorry, that was my iPad making noise.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of the point I was making earlier with the counter argument that it's still a private company, but screwing over your customer or your end user is the stupidest thing you can do for no apparent reason, because most of the people who are getting shadow banned or even just outright banned, like Adam Baldwin, are just being banned because they're not even breaking the terms of service or use, or whatever you want to call it.
Nope. I mean, Baldwin just protested the platform, and for some reason, the only tweet that's visible is this pinned one, which says, "Hey, Twitter, get your shit together," and all the other ones are gone. And that's pretty funny that they'd actually leave that one up, because it's just gonna give him a lot more attention, and it's gonna give that post that he made a lot more attention. Yeah, that's what's happened. That's what they're doing, and again, like I said, it's not boding well for them. I predict Twitter will fizzle out by the end of the year. It'll basically become the next MySpace.
Yeah, I don't even know what the.
Honestly, I was saying that too. They're going the way of MySpace.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The only thing that really bugs me about this is Twitter's still used by the media. Like, you still go to places that protest Twitter, like Breitbart, and they'll have a whole bunch of tweets that they're highlighting as part of the article. In fact, that'll be like 50% of the article will be tweets. So something's got to replace that to fill that void, because people are still using that as a crutch, and it's still going to give Twitter more attention. It's going to bring new users onto the platform. So the problem I'm seeing is, if another platform that doesn't come up to compete with Twitter, Twitter might stagnate, but it'll still be around. Someone should get to work on that, and I mean, like, they really should. I don't think it'll be GNU Social, but get something else to override it. That's the only way it's going to stop this kind of megaphoning.
Yeah, Norbert Delta is making a really good point in the chat. Once an alternative establishes itself, the exodus will begin. I would agree.
Yep, I agree with that 100% as well.
If there's a really good viable alternative to Twitter, people are gonna mass flock, just like it did with MySpace and other similar sites that are just gonna get abandoned.
Yeah. The other thing too is that this is the perfect situation for an alternative to get set up, because they literally have people on Twitter complaining, saying, "This is what we want you to do, Twitter," and they could just be sitting there writing this down and going, "Okay, build Twitter build something really similar to Twitter, but do all this stuff and add all this stuff and make it really cool." And then they fucking got that, and as soon as it comes out, people are just gonna be like, "Holy shit!" And then it's just gonna be Twitter's just gonna be a graveyard.
Pretty much. That's all you'd have to do. Hell, Milo could probably do it by just taking some money he has and just spending it on a new platform. Get a whole bunch of just conservative buddies to promote it, and boom, done.
He could get Trump to do it. Have Trump build a new Twitter.
Yeah. Make Twitter
All
great
right.
again.
I think we pretty much covered. Is there anything you want to cover before we close the stream? We could kind of continue this off air if you want to. Is there anything in particular you wanna cover or shill or whatever?
Shout out to Hope on Twitter.
All right. You can. All I'm gonna do is just say you can follow me at jkellytwit on Twitter. And that's about it.
All right. Yeah, you can follow me at _underdog. I forgot. I get always to shill my own stuff. Well, yeah. We're gonna probably continue this off air. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you have comments or anything afterwards, go ahead and if there's anything you disagree with. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye.